All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Lure Lab here, a part of the Serious Angler Network. And as always, I'm your captain, Andrew Full, and this is episode 105. And today we are talking about the Shaky Head with Elite Series qualifier Emil Wagner. I apologize for not being able to talk, but we're going to dive into a few things here based on what his favorite Shaky Head is and worms, where the best place to target a bass is on a local lake, so that you can have more success on the water. And we got a laundry list of questions here for him, all the way to best conditions and what worm color do you use based on those conditions. So stay tuned. This is going to be a good one. And as always, everything that we're talking about today here on the Lure Lab will be linked down below in the description. So you can click on those links, head on over to Omnia and save 10% on your next order. So without further ado, let's get Emil on here and talk all things Shaky Head, because up here in the north, we just don't throw it. So I'm curious to see how he throws it and how it's been such a prevalent technique that seems like it doesn't make its way up here. So let's get him on here. Emil, what's up, my man? How are you?
What's going on? How are you?
Good. Big congrats again, Elite Series. I don't think we've had you on to Serious Angler since you qualified, have we?
You guys dropped me. You had me on like once. Thought we had a good podcast, and I never heard back. So,
oh man, I'm gonna have to get on Bailey's case.
No, it's all good. It's been a fun couple weeks trying to get everything figured out.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then no entry fees, right? Like, could I ask how you're feeling about that before we hop in? Or
yeah, that's a whole nother deal. But I'm not really mad about it, and I'm not happy about it either. It's just it is what it is. I'll be honest. I mean, if I fish the way I've been fishing, it would hurt me because I mean the top half of the guys in Angler of the Year points, they're going to make less money, but the bottom half, the guys who struggled, end up way in the green because they lost way less. So it's kind of a wash in the end, but I definitely don't love the payouts. But I guess it takes some of the risk out of it. But I don't know. We'll see. There'll probably be some side pots and stuff. So
side pots are always good. Like there's a local derby up here that we fish at the beginning of October every year. It's a Canadian event. They have $100 side pot. So we make sure we stop and get the Canadian funds out to enter it, because we don't want to give them $100 that's worth $70, right? So
and we do them at local tournaments all the time too. So I'll be all over. I don't care if the side pot's $5,000. I'll be in it.
Yeah. You have to be to make any money sometimes. But this one is $100 a boat. And first place ended up winning like 18 grand because of the side pot. So it's like, yeah, you got to be in it to win it. You can make a lot of money there. So
yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be a good deal. It's, on paper it's good. No entry fees, but they're definitely going to have to figure some stuff out with the payouts if it's going to be a long-term thing. But hopefully in the future, they pump some more money in it every year. It'll be a good thing. But time will tell. I'm a rookie, so I'm just hanging out for the ride, and I'm not gonna be real hot about any issues right off the rip.
Right. It almost, like, thinking about it and looking the way it was ripped out, it's like, man, why didn't they just be like, all right, we'll cut the entry fees in half, right, and keep payouts the same, or maybe from 27th to 40th make it $5,000 instead of $10,000. I was like, ooh, when I saw $500, I was like, man, you could make more money.
That's where I think
jackpot derby.
Yeah, if they could get to where that 40th to 25th, whatever it is $5,000, then you're making whatever,
or even $1,000, right? Cover your traveler costs and gas costs.
But really, I mean, 5 would be the number to get it at least to where it was, because then you were making the $10,000 checks. You can automatically take $5,000 out of that for the entry fee, so you're making 5. Minus the expenses and everything. But I'm saying if those could get to 5 and we didn't have to pay an entry fee, that'd be a good deal. So
yeah, I agree. But further ado, right? Like, should digress here and move forward. Yeah. Shaky Head. So we're going to dive right in. I think everyone who bass fishes knows what a shaky head. So I'm not going to ask you what a shaky head is, but we're going to dive right in. And what is your go-to shaky head, jig head, and maybe some of your favorite worms?
Yeah, I've got 2 heads I throw. The first one is just the Berkeley Fusion Shaky Head. These happen to be 1/8 ounce. I throw 8, 3/16, and 1/4 ounce. Those are my 3 sizes. Occasionally, if I'm like ledge fishing, I'll throw a 58, so like a big one. But those are really the 3 I throw. And yeah, this Berkeley Fusion's really good. And then I also throw this one. It's got kind of a funky hook on it. It's called a skip gap. Not a lot of people throw these.
Gamakatsu hook too, right?
Yeah. Yep. They're made by Gamakatsu, but they don't make them anymore. So you can't buy them. Or there's some online, but they're fizzling out. But these are really the 2 I throw. This one's got a little bit thinner hook in it. And I like it for like deep spotted bass, timber. Like, I don't know. I feel like my hookup ratio on this one's really, really good. This one's got a little bit thicker hook in it, a slightly shorter shank. And like when I'm fishing around cover and stuff, I like this one a little bit more. But those are really the 2 I throw. I keep it super simple. And yeah, those are really good heads. I mean, they both got really good hooks. That's the biggest thing for me, a good hook, a good line tie that doesn't just totally stick for, too far out of the head. And as far as worms, obviously I'm sponsored by them, but it's the God's honest truth. I was throwing them before I worked with them. The Berkeley General and the Magnum Hitworm, that is all I need. And for spotted bass specifically, which is what I do the most, that General is hard to beat. I don't know what it is with spotted bass, but a Cinco on a Shaky Head, when it falls, like you get that twirl.
Like a tube.
Yeah. And they eat it on the fall, like over 50% of the time. And summertimes they're not on that. Cinco is good for some reason. And sorry, I'm getting a call. I'm trying to figure out how to get this off.
It happens.
It does. You should put that on Do Not Disturb.
Just have a good Apple ringtone. We should bill Apple for that.
Call you back. Gotta love it.
Yeah, always. It never goes as planned. But
no, the General's really freaking good. I mean, it was kind of
General or regular, like
the Max 10. It was kind of something some guys kept quiet around here for a while. Now it's a little more common knowledge. But that thing and a Hitworm, like I said, they're just you've got to be kidding me. 2 different people.
They want guide trips.
This isn't even the same person.
So good.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So,
but no. So the Hitworm, this is fantastic. The General's really, really good. And then honestly, when I'm on like Lanier or like the Herring Lakes, I'd probably lean towards the General more than anything else. But the Hitworm, as far as like anywhere I go, dude, that thing's such a good worm. Like there's some guys, I'm not going to name names, who were using that worm a lot before they got different sponsors, and they were killing it with it. And dude, that thing is freaking deadly.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just the original Hitworm.
I'm turning on my Do Not Disturb.
You're getting blown up right now.
Dude, I haven't got a text in like 45 minutes, an hour, the second we start this podcast.
Yeah, I'm the same way, but I put mine on like silent. I got like 17 text messages. Oh, there's another call coming through, huh?
Oh, that was me.
Oh,
so, I think we're good now.
It's so good. Now, are you a 5-inch General guy or a 4?
Yeah, all 5-inch. I messed with the 4 a little bit, but dude, they like the 5. I don't know what. I think it's almost like because there's more plastic, so it falls a little bit different, but
probably a little slower too.
Yeah, and like I'm all about like keeping it simple. So when I find something that works, and it works like well, like dude, that 5-inch General, if I'm around spotted bass and I'm throwing a Shaky Head and I had to pick one, that would be it. But if I'm talking more like largemouth, like if I'm on Eufaula, fishing brush, like just a little more regular bass fishing, I prefer that Hitworm. But those are definitely my setups. And then as far as weight sizes go, that's honestly maybe even a bigger deal than the worm itself, in my opinion. When I'm fishing deep timber or like really deeper than like 30 foot, I like a 1/4 ounce. If they're eating really good and they're like in that like kind of deep but also shallow range and they're biting really good, I throw a 3/16. If it's like dead calm and tough and they're hard to get to bite and they're shallower, that 1/8 ounce. And I've seen it to where like, and it goes both ways. There are times I've thrown a 1/4 ounce and I cannot get bit on an 1/8. And there are times when they will eat nothing but that light head. And like you will outfish the guy next to you 5-1. It's crazy.
Wow. It drives me. I hate it when they're on like a big time tube bite here up here on Erie with the smallmouth. There are days where they'll only eat a quarter, and that'll be sunny, slick, calm. You could see down 30 feet. You put like a 1 ounce or a 3/4 ounce tube head on a bait caster and like drop it on their head. They smoke it instantly. I'm like,
Yeah,
this is going against everything in the book.
I know. I've seen the same thing over here. I've messed with some really heavy stuff the last year. Just like thinking outside the box. I'm like, why the hell did they eat that when I've been trying to like finesse them with all this stuff?
Yeah.
But fall rates are a huge deal. So I always try to kind of match the head with how deep the fish are, how heavy the wind is, how good they're biting. All that stuff kind of plays a factor, but you can figure it out pretty quick, like which one they want the most.
Do you ever notice how it's like a time of day deal, and sometimes they'll eat the lighter one in the morning, and as the day progresses, all of a sudden it's like you have to change it up and hit them with something heavy, and they fire, and you're like, "What the hell?"
100%, and especially like I compare everything to Lake Lanier because that's just where I guide. But the first hour of the morning, there's always a really shallow bite, like less than 5 foot, and like big spots, like 5 pounders. And like you're saying, if they're that shallow, at least for us, you normally have to hit them with a pretty light head. It's like I don't know if you spook them or if they just won't eat it, but you throw a quarter or 3/8 up there in 2 feet of water, and it's gin clear, like they're not going to eat it.
It's like that mud pile splash looks a little wrong.
Yeah,
Running away.
Exactly. So paying attention to all that stuff's a big deal. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys, they get in the boat and they're, oh, I got a shaky head. And I'm like, what size is it? And they're, I don't know. I'm like, that stuff's important. But
100%, and line size too, right? Like matching
100%.
it up based on fall rates, etc. Like it's hard to keep all of that together. And I guess that's the premise of the Lure Lab, is making an encyclopedia for people to listen and learn. So I want to know a memorable tournament catch or a story that is memorable guiding or just fishing in general with Shaky Head.
So I got one. I've got a lot, but the one that sticks out to me is the TAA event this year on Lake Lanier. It was that no live scope tournament they had.
Oh, yeah.
I got third in it. I caught like 20 pounds a day, and I think 12 or 13 of the 15 fish I weighed in were on a shaky head. And like people, like they still don't believe it. They think I'm like lying. I'm like, no, that's literally what I weigh like half my fish on in late fall to early mid spring. And it's just such a deadly technique. But no, that tournament, the very first day, I was sitting on like 16 and a half, 17 pounds, which I thought was a pretty good bag considering it was no live scope. And it would have ended up being like a mid-pack bag, maybe upper mid-pack. And with like an hour and a half, no, with like 2 hours left, I pulled up to this shallow hump, and it was in April. Most of the guys that caught them were bed fishing, but I was fishing for spots where I assumed they were spawning. And there was a shallow hump with one big stump out there, and I just knew generally where it was at, and the wind was ripping. So I spot locked upwind of the hump, lined up, got on the back deck, and 8-ounce shaky head, heavy wind, because I was just trying to get bit. And I threw it out there where I thought the stump was, dude, and I hit the stump. And the first one I catch is a 415, so almost 5-pounder, 4 pounds, 15 ounces spot. And I'm like, holy crap, now I got like 19 or like 19 and a half. I'm like, I'm right where I need to be. Like, this is awesome. Rig that thing back up, same exact cast, hit the stump again, 5.4. So I went from 17 pounds to 21 pounds in 2 casts. And I'm 90% sure those 2 fish were on bed together on that stump in like 10 foot of water, because spots spawn a lot deeper. But dude, that to me was one of like the most badass things, because I was like fishing a tiny isolated target with you weren't allowed to have 360, no live scope, no nothing. I was straight up triangulating it, and I hit it perfectly and caught those 2 giants. And I'm not going to lie.
How many times over again do you think you could do that?
That perfectly? I mean, I think most people would be lying if they said they do it a lot, but dude, that was just like one of those where I was like, damn. Like it was just like cool as hell. But
when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. So. But it was just like everything was just perfect. And I was like, wow, that'll never happen again.
You say that until you fish a derby at Lanier that's no live scope or no Mega 360 again. And by the way, that TAA, I thought he was going to have a fall event.
He was. I've talked to him a bunch. I don't know. They're trying to figure out sponsor stuff and all kinds of stuff. But I know he's working on it. But I'm sure, hopefully, we'll at least have another Lanier one. And he doesn't put it the week that every largemouth on the entire lake is on bed. But because everyone before that tournament was like, you catch 18 and a half, 19 pounds a day, you got it won. I caught 20 a day and got third. But it was because Chris Johnson
were playing, right?
I can't make this up. I've never seen him on bed like that in my the third day I was struggling bad and I went and caught a limit off bed in an hour. And I just went in a pocket and boop, boop, boop. Like it was just, they
just all played at one time, basically.
It was the perfect storm. And I was like, that's about typical, but
that's a once in 100-year event right there.
Yeah. They'll never hit it like that again.
Jeez.
But no, the first day I caught 21 all on a Shaky Head. The second day I caught 19-30 all on a Shaky Head. And the last day I caught 2 or 3 on a Shaky Head and 2 on a Demiki. But without live scope. But
the old 2D plug and play.
Like, it wasn't even with 2D. I was casting it. But it was
counter down. Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it almost, I'm not gonna lie, that was such a fun tournament. I was like, I wouldn't mind some more no live scope tournaments. I know everyone's like, "Oh, you're young. That's the only thing y'all do." But I really enjoyed it. But yeah, that was probably my most memorable one. But I definitely got quite a few.
As much as I love scoping fish, it's almost more fun to pick up like a big flipping stick at this point because that's what we focus on, like going shallow, flipping grass, kind of like you did at Leech Lake. You probably had a ball doing that.
I broke it.
You did.
That was so funny. Because like the whole top 10 was smallmouth fishing, and like I actually went and did that because I wanted to just catch a few, and I was like, I bet nobody's gonna do this on live. Like it was kind of in my head.
Yeah.
I went up there and like I threw a frog over that mat, and it was the best mat I'd found in pre-practice. Like nuts with a frog, and had one little blow up, or it was a big blow up, but he missed it and covered the whole thing. And I was like, something's off. I just went up there and like flipped a couple up, and then I opened my Instagram when I checked in, and I was like, "Good Lord!" Like everyone was freaking out.
Oh yeah,
like, yeah. I know.
Everyone's like, "The scopers can only scope." Yeah, you broke mass for an hour. Good job.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
That is great. So next question here, right? Why do so many anglers swear by a Shaky Head, but why is there just as many that refuse to throw it? Do you have it? And it's an opinion-based question. So like, what is your opinion here?
That's a good question. I think there's kind of a lot of options for like a Shaky Head, not a Shaky Head style bait, but like another bait that could accomplish a similar goal. But for me, it's like the only other thing I'll throw that I feel like is I'll get the same bites on as a Nico rig. But the problem with a Nico rig is I get it hung. So if I'm fishing for fish that are on bare bottom, I'll throw that Nico rig a lot. But usually where I'm throwing the Shaky Head, especially for spotted bass, which is I feel like when I throw it the most, they're around usually around a rock pile or a rock vein. And I'm not scoping them 90% of the time. I'm throwing up there and fishing that rock vein really slow. And if I do that with an eco rig, I get hung. If I do it with a Ned rig, I get hung. If I do it with a Shaky Head, I don't poke the hook out real far. If anything, the tip's just barely sticking out, but I can get that bait through the cover. So I think one of the biggest things is just that you can get it through cover. You can't do that with a lot of other baits. And dude, it just gets bit. Like it's a simple technique, and I mean it's been around forever. I feel like now they probably don't see them as much either. But you look at a guy like Jesse Wiggins. Jesse Wiggins has made his career on a Shaky Head. Like they don't joke about that. Like I met him. I know him and his brother pretty decent, and like they literally throw a Shaky Head everywhere they go. Like it's just one of those techniques where if you get comfortable with it, like there's so many places you can throw it. But it's really, for me, I'll be honest though, for me it's more of a spotted bass thing than anything. For whatever reason, spots go nuts over it. Not to say I still had plenty of tournaments, TVA, whatever it might be, where I've pulled it out and caught some really nice ones. But it's just a good bait. I mean, there's even I've thrown a drop shot up in the same places I get bit on a Shaky Head, and they don't seem to eat it as good. I mean, it's right there dead on the bottom, and just a really good bait.
Yeah. So do you think that's why you see a lot of guys down south throw it as opposed to the people up north, right? Is because it's such a good spotted bass technique, and that's
Yeah,
where
that
the
definitely
spot.
has something to do with it. I think too, like I could be wrong. You smallmouth fish more than I do, but like it seems like a lot of the smallmouth stuff is shorter, and a lot of the shaky head stuff is 5 to 6 inch in profile.
The smallmouth will eat those big things too. They're not
Well, then I
super.
don't know. Maybe y'all need to try it more.
Yeah, I might need to. You know what it is? I think it's a weight thing and waiting for it to get down. Like
Right.
an eighth ounce or a quarter ounce is going to take, with all the current that we have in the Great Lakes, it might just take too long for it to get down to those fish. That's about the
Yeah.
only thing I can think of. Because like
You
I've
need to,
tried,
hey, on your next trip, you need to go out there with a shaky head and a general and just throw it down there and see what happens. Maybe they'll absolutely crush it because they've never seen it.
do you know the queen tackle like rattling one they had? Like the
I know what you're
rattling
talking
shaky
about. I've
head.
never used
I think it's like a hammerhead or something. So Poor Boys makes like a darter bait, and I used to catch them with that on that hammerhead, like the big darter with a bait caster. It was so. It seemed like if you got bit on it, it was a giant, but 99% of the time they wouldn't bite it because they want that bait flat on the bottom like a goby, and that shaky head it makes it pop up, and it doesn't look realistic to what
Yeah, I
they want.
used to throw in high school. We threw them all the time, in the high school tournaments, and we would throw that old Buckeye. I think it was called a spot remover.
Yeah,
But dude, we lost so many fish on that thing, and it was because the gap from the keeper to the hook point was so small. It just we didn't realize it at the time because we were idiots. But dude, we were just losing them
you're
like.
learning.
And I think too there was so much bulk from that flat head, they'd swallow it and you'd set the hook and I guess you blow their mouth open, but it looked really good in the water. It got bit really good, but I need like my thing, like with anything, like I'll take a few less bites even if it means I'm going to put them in the boat. Good
Yeah.
hook, all that stuff. But,
Yeah, if you're going to get 7 bites as opposed to 10, you're still going to get the quality bites in your mind, right? So why not take the higher percentage? If you're going to land 6 of the 10 with the one jig head, but you're going to land 6 out of 7 with the other, you're going to take the higher percentage all day. I agree.
Yeah, I really don't lose many on the shaky head, honestly.
So lucky you. I'm sure a lot of people do.
Oh, in
But
turn, well, I say that, go fish a tournament, I'll lose them. But
knock on wood, that doesn't happen, right? So
yeah.
now you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there are multiple ways to present a shaky head, right? Like multiple ways to fish it. But I'm curious, what are like the few ways that you think are best to get bit?
The number one simplest way to throw it, and also it kind of ties into I think the biggest mistake people make. Just I see it guiding all the time is people throw it the way the pretty much the name reads, a shaky head. They throw it out there and they do way too much with it, like it's a jig or something. They're popping their rod tip and
A
doing this
tight
stuff.
line.
Yeah, tight line, exactly. You can do that stuff if you have a ton of slack in your line, but the most important thing with a shaky head, in my opinion, is that you're not pulling it off the bottom constantly. If that bait's coming up off the bottom, even people like if you're dragging it really slow on a tight line like this, you're pulling that bait off the bottom. I don't care if you're going super slow. If you're pulling it off a whatever, a drop
A
or
subtle
just
drop.
any contour lines, you're typically pulling your bait deeper unless you're fishing uphill. If you're dragging that bait even really slow and it's an eighth or a 3/16, you're coming off that drop like this, and then your bait's coming down, and then you're pulling it up, and then like this. So one thing that's really important for me is especially if I'm deep, is I drag to the side 90% of the time. That keeps that bait down further, and I'm dragging with a lot of slack, and it's a happy medium. You drag with just enough slack to where you can feel if one picks it up, but you also don't want it tight to where you're pulling it off the bottom. So it's honestly kind of, I couldn't say how much it is. You just kind of have to feel it, but
Just fish it and feel it. Yeah.
yeah, you're just pulling your slack. And no, I always tell people with a shaky head, the less the better. I mean, you can especially, it doesn't even matter if it's really hot out. Like I'm barely dragging that bait. And then the one other thing I'll do is if you're slowly dragging it and you hit your brush or your rock pile, or you see one on scope and he's on it, or anytime you feel like you're in that really high percentage zone, you can shake your slack without moving the bait itself. You're moving the bait, but you're not moving the location of the bait. So say your shaky head's right here, you're sitting there and it's shaking like that, but you're not pulling it up off the bottom. It's just sitting there and real light. I'll do that for up to, dude, in the wintertime, it's the stupidest thing. If you've got the patience, you can do it for up to a minute and a half. And then for whatever reason,
there and shake it in place on slack.
And it's painful, but there are times it'll pay off. But really, I don't have like a bunch of retrieves. I do. It's really just those two. I just fishing it slow and keeping it on the bottom. And again, imparting action on the bait without moving it a bunch is the biggest deal. So you'll see
thing to teach someone.
Do what?
It's the hardest thing to teach someone.
Yes, it really is, because on the surface you're like, oh, it's a shaky head. You throw it out there and you drag it. That's like saying it's a crankbait. You throw it out there and reel it in. There's a lot that goes into doing it right, and that's why you see a guy like, say, a Jesse Wiggins who whoops everyone's butt with a shaky head. It's because A, he's got the confidence, but B, he's fishing that thing correctly every single cast.
He knows the tiny nuances that somebody else hasn't figured out yet at that time.
Yes, and you do all that stuff right every cast. I mean, you're just gonna catch it, and you're gonna catch more than the other guy throwing it, who's over there just kind of spot lock, talking to his co-angler, shaking his stuff around. Like it's you really got to pay attention. But the number one most important thing is keeping it on the bottom. If I had to pick one thing,
I think that's great advice. So the next one is, I want to talk about like areas on the lake that we're going to throw the shaky head, but I'm going to pull up the map here from Omnia Premium Pro. And then the next question, because Premium Pro is cool, we have all these different layers that we can add in. I'm going to ask you the first question here real fast as I lose my notes. What are like some of the areas that you're looking to throw the shaky head in? And we're talking offline, so I brought up a lake that you're very familiar with here. It's up to you if you want to name drop it or not, but I'm sure people that are watching will know where you are. So where on this lake would you say is the best place in this general region to throw a shaky head?
It's really it's kind of tough, right? Because it depends what you're doing with it. But when I'm really talking like a specific shaky head bite, it's the most special one to me is like the shallow rock pile rock vein bite. And it's like a one cast kind of deal. But so we're on Lake Lanier right here. This is 6 Mile Creek. And you can see there's a narrow pinch point as you're running into the creek. There's the first one you have to go through.
Right here.
And then there's this. Yep. And then there's the second one you go through. And then right there to your right, between that point and that one isolated dock in there, is right in there. There's a steep break on the bank in there. So right there, the point itself is like the most obvious eye candy ever. And then there's, the 2 docks right there. But between there, it just looks like clay, nothing bank. But then you go about 15, 20 feet, or probably a little further, 30 feet off that bank. It goes from like flat clay to like a really steep drop off with some rock on it. And again, that's like a high percentage one cast place. And I'll sit out, in that ditch a little bit, and I'll just throw my shaky head up there in the dirt. And I was
seeing if there's a contour line to pull up, but CMAP hasn't fully loaded in here yet.
Yeah, you can see it pretty good if it was loaded, but it's you throw it up in there, and dude, I just inch it out there, and you'll feel once you start coming off that drop, and you'll get bit almost immediately. And then if you zoom out a little more and go back to that first pinch point, and then kind of go into where this little pocket is to your right, this tiny little pocket. Otherwise, I don't know. No, out in the main lake. Yeah, right in there. So that bank, that point you're on right there, and then that bank going towards the pinch point is, I call it like crawfish rock. So it's perfect. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like,
this looks good right here too.
Yeah. So that's like a kind of a standard shoal. But where we get bit on the shaky head mostly is actually on that bank coming out of that little pocket.
You can almost see
More
like
so,
there's a couple
so
boulders
actually,
and trees.
yeah, and then that other bank too on the other side of that little pocket. Yeah, that one's really where I like to fish it. And you can't see it that good because of all the trees right there, but it's like I said, it's not straight clay and it's not straight rock. It's this perfect mix of like red clay, and then there's just all these little rocks mixed in with it. And I don't know if it's because the crawfish get in them, but those kind of banks are typically really good for a shaky head. And again, they're shallow. You can crank through them, but then there's a lot of like leaves and stuff that you get hung in and mud, and it's just I don't know. It's not really the deal, but anywhere you can find a bank like that, or like I said, just a high percentage place, whether it's a drop like that first place
Mhm.
we were on, or a single piece of timber or a brush pile, anywhere isolated like that is where I really like to throw it. But
Love it. So I want to go in a little bit more depth with you here real fast, just like in this general area that we're fishing. But say like you have overcast conditions, right? And you have some wind blowing in there now. So you have, let's see if the layer here will actually work for me. So wind, maybe. Oh yeah, can you see the wind? There it is.
yeah,
So you're running into here, right? And you have tournament, you're out fun fishing, whatever you want to do, based on the current wind forecast. So it looks like it's coming from the northeast based on
yep.
this map. Where would you maybe position your boat in order to get bit on one of these spots? And how would
So
you
in
set
this
it?
case, I fish off the back deck a lot with a shaky head. If it's allowed, I can't do it in the opens, but
Yeah.
um, in this case, like that spot we were just on, I'd probably put my boat on that point, or even
Like
just to
this point
air out
here.
in that pocket. And I'm like I said, because if I'm fishing a shallow bank like that, it's normally a 3/16 or an 1/8 ounce, and you're not throwing that thing into the wind, at least not effectively.
Right.
So I'm gonna get my boat into the wind to where I'm not. Spots are really curious too, so they'll come to your boat. So if you get too close to them, you're not gonna catch them. So you want to get just far enough to where you can still pretty much you want to get as far away as possible, but still be able to reach your target. So I'm gonna just get up into the wind to where I can still make a cast to where I want to go, and probably hit spot lock. So probably somewhere out in front of that point, and then I'll just inch my way
Somewhere
down.
like right in here.
Yeah, yeah, and then inch my way down until I fish, the section of that bank I wanted to. But then when it comes to wind direction too, I mean, so a lot of those spots, like if it's dead calm, I'm hitting the best spots I know of. But if there's a really heavy wind, I might hit a spot that's not as good if it has the wind on it, because then you're just likely to catch a big fish on it because it's got wind on it. But
Yeah. Makes
yeah,
sense to me. No, thank you for breaking that down.
yeah,
Greatly
for sure.
appreciate it. So I'll pull this down here and we'll hop into our next questions, right? So no, truly appreciate that. So like let's say it's cloudy, rainy, and you still are only getting bit on a shaky head. Like what are some general colors that you throw based on the conditions? So like sunny, do you have a go-to color? Rain and wind and overcast, is there a go-to color?
So around the house, I keep it extremely simple. I throw green pumpkin and green pumpkin party, I believe they call it. It's the one that's green pumpkin with like 4 or 5 different
Oh
flakes.
yeah, great color.
And so like that's really it. And you don't need to overcomplicate it. Like green pumpkin's all you need. I've tried the watermelons, the browns, all that. Green pumpkin gets bit the best, 100%. But when I'm in more of a stingy water situation, like I always use Eufaula as an example, Alabama, because I fish there a good bit. Those plum colors work really well. So like the Magnum Hitworm, they have one that's like kind of purple. Brandon Lester won that Pickwick tournament, Nico rigging it, and that one's really good too. But like if you open my Hitworm bag, I've got like 100 bags. They're green pumpkin and plum. That's it.
Do you ever throw black?
So that's actually one I've messed with for the first time this year, because it's kind of like an old school Southern thing that like I'd always heard and never done. But I had a buddy who was like real hot on it, and I've caught some fish on it, but I'm yet to see where I've been like, oh, this is the deal. But I wouldn't discount it either, because I know some guys who have messed them up on a black worm. So
I'm gonna drop a little juice nugget for up here where I'm at. There are days where they won't eat a flatworm, but I'll take the regular size hitworm in black and wacky rig it and shake the fire out of it on a slack line for smallies. And they
I could
come
see that.
unglued on it. Yeah. But it has to be
the
the
few
small one,
times I
not the
fished
big one.
for smallies this year, I did throw black a couple times, but for me, I didn't find it got bit better than
It's either on or it's not on. Like there's days that it outfishes everything, and then you'll go a
right.
week and not catch a single fish.
Huh.
So it's just situational based. And I'm not going to go that far because I've kind of dialed it in, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I think I have it, and I'm like, I went 7 days fishing those conditions and never caught one. So like
Yeah,
maybe
dude, I'm
I'm
the
just
same
like,
way. I'm the same
just like
way. Like
crap.
we actually had a trip the other day, and it was tough as all get out. And we'd been catching them on a shaky head this week, and I pulled something stupid out of the box, just thinking, and literally first cast with it, first fish I saw, I caught it, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I just
Come on.
unlocked everything. Like this fish reacted to it totally different. We'd been throwing at hundreds of fish, not getting them to eat, and this thing just came up and destroyed it. And I was like, game over. And then I went and threw it 100 more, and they didn't bite. I was like, oh well, never mind.
You're
So
like, well, I guess I'll keep this to that one fish that wants to bite it that one time
yeah,
and waste 3 hours trying. Gotta love it.
yeah,
So,
right.
what is your setup for throwing the shaky head? Are you a spinning rod guy or are you a bait caster guy?
Always a spinning rod. I throw it, and obviously I'm with Fenwick now, but I've thrown it on this pretty much, honestly, even the same length and action rod my whole life. And it's a 7-1 medium extra fast. And it's just the best all around, like shaky head. I throw a fluke on it too. And it's got a good bit of power to it. I throw like my drop shots and Nico rigs and stuff. I throw on a 7.2 medium light because they're open hook. But with that shaky head, I've just found that, like I said, I like those medium lights. I throw them a ton. But for whatever reason, with a shaky head, you have to pull so much plastic. For whatever reason, I miss and lose a bunch on the medium lights. I've tried it time and time again. But the 7-1 medium spinning rod, I mean, it's pretty, pretty all around rod. It's really good for it. This is a world class. Fenwick's actually got a pretty cool thing now. It's called Family Flex. It's like part of this new line of rods they've come out with. So if like this is their most high end rod, but you can go get an HMG $150 rod or an Eagle, an $80 rod, and they've designed them. They spent a bunch of money doing it to where if you buy a 7-1 medium in a world class, it's going to have the exact same action as a 7-1 medium in the Eagle and everywhere in between. So if y'all were interested in one, that's pretty good,
sweet.
cool deal because they're all the same and you can kind of match whatever price point you want. But no, 7-1 medium, and then all my rods I use are in my truck. So this one doesn't have a bail arm on me. Don't make or they're in my boat, not in my truck. But this is a 3,000 size Xenon spinning reel. I pretty much use all 3,000s, and really good
We'll just
reel.
blame the client for stepping on the bail and you just have
That's actually exactly what happened. But no, and then it's got. I really like something. I throw a spinning rod a lot, and I just like something with a really good drag. So I wouldn't skimp too much on the spinning reel if you can. I mean, obviously get whatever's in your price range, but yeah, good spinning reel, 3,000 or 2,500 size is hard to beat. And then I throw 8-pound Berkeley X9 braid to a 8 or 10-pound 100% fluorocarbon leader. 8 if it's real tough, real calm, real clear, and then if they're biting good, I throw 10. I prefer 10. I'd say I throw 10 more than anything.
You know what I love about like all these people use like all these fancy fluorocarbons and stuff, right? Like the 100% fluorocarbon by Berkeley might be a little bit thicker on the line diameter size per pound.
Yeah, you gotta.
You have to understand that part of it, but
Yeah.
it's like one of the very few fluorocarbons you can go out and buy at any store, and it's gonna react and act the exact same.
And it doesn't break.
Yeah.
Dude, it's a really good line. And
very underrated.
Like when I first got with Berkeley, I hadn't used their fluoro, so I was a little bit skeptical. I'll admit that. Like I was a big Seaguar guy, and I started using it, and I was like, "Damn, this stuff's actually really good." Like I love it now. I use it on virtually everything, and it's
out of like the entire pure fishing line. I feel like the fluorocarbon is probably the biggest thing that people sleep on.
100%. I was one of them, and dude, especially like on a bait caster, like I broke a lot of fish off the last 3 years, but this year specifically, like this is no BS. I have broke off way less fish than I typically have, and the only thing I can attribute that to is just that line's stronger. So I don't know. I've grown to really like it. So
Yeah,
and that X line, good stuff too. And they're coming out with a new braid. They showed it at ICAST. I've been using it a bunch too. It's their forward braid. It's like a fused braid. It's pretty different, but I really like it too. I don't have any with me.
Look forward to seeing that. That's exciting. So hit you with the last question here, Emil. We went way past the time allotment that I told you that we would.
It's all good.
It's usually the way it goes. But are there any tips that you can share with the viewership? People are tuning in for the first time to the Shaky Head episode and they've made it this far, to help them gain confidence in throwing the Shaky Head, or a way to present it to help them get more bites, to make it simpler?
Yeah, so I'll start with the typical answer you give to any bait, but it is true, so I won't not say it. Just throw it. It's the only way to get good at anything, and I'm not going to not say that because it's just true. Like that is the only way. I don't care if you're talking about getting good at live scope, getting good with a shaky head, getting good with a crankbait. The only way to get good at it, and I used to, before I could go to the lake all the time, like in high school, I just had some ponds that were really good. So like, if I wanted confidence in a bait, I would just take it to those ponds and catch a bunch of fish on it. And that's enough to, believe it or not, get confidence up, and you can go throw it almost anywhere you want. But other than that, I would say, back to kind of what I said earlier, just make sure you're not overworking the bait. Pull up to places you know have fish. Don't overwork it. Fish it slow with a shaky head. And like, you're going to get bit. That's one thing with a shaky head, especially down here, south, southeast. Even out really, just, I guess the only place I haven't messed with it a bunch is up north. But if you're somewhere down here and you're around fish that are catchable, you can catch them on a shaky head. So like,
quotations on catchable.
Yeah. These days, some of the freaking things just aren't catchable. But if find, a good place, whether it's a ditch, a point, a rock pile, whatever, that's got some fish, and throw it out there in that region they're at, and just fish it slow. And I promise you, if they're there and they want to eat, I mean, you're probably going to get bit,
Love it.
Especially, like I said, my favorite time of year to throw, it's coming up. I always tell people around here, it's not something I throw a bunch on herring lakes when it's real hot, but late fall up until pretty much they're done spawning. So like late April, mid-May, I weigh so many tournament fish on a shaky head. Like it's not just something I throw guiding. It's something I throw in tournaments all the time. Like it gets big freaking bites, and it gets a lot of bites. So I would say just keep it in your hand and don't overwork it. Those would be my two biggest tips.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Emil. I appreciate the time. I'm glad we're able to finally figure out something and get you on here. And if we don't chat on the other podcast before the elite season starts, best of luck, and go catch them up, man.
Thank you. I'm going to need it against those guys. So it'll be fun.
It'll be fun watching the season, and we look forward to seeing more success from you. So go catch them, dude.
Man. Appreciate you having me on.
No, thank you, and we'll chat soon.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode with Elite Series qualifier Emil Wagner, and discussing everything Shaky Head. And I feel like you're going to take some really good points away from this and be able to put a lot more fish in the boat, on the bank, or in your kayak by listening to this episode. So we thank you. And as always, all the links are down in the description, so you can click on those. Head over to Omnia, save yourself 10% on all the products that are available that we discussed in this episode on their website. But until next week, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform if it allows you to do so. Stay tuned for next week's episode.